This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. After experiencing trauma, I went to therapy, and my therapist guided me through a difficult time in my life. They helped me understand what was happening and provided me with tools to cope and find my own strength and resilience. Their experience and compassion were invaluable and enabled me to rebuild my life and move forward. I strongly believe in the power of therapy to help people through difficult times. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. First, you go to their site. You can use my link, betterhelp.com/resilience. You answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you to a professional who has years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you, all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/resilience or choose podcast, then notes on resilience during sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month.
Work shouldn't hurt. And so when we create workplaces where it does, we are hurting more than just our employees, and we are hurting more than our bottom line. We are hurting the communities in which those people reside. As we, look to grow more talent in an ever shrinking talent market, understanding how to retain that talent, it's a huge business problem. And so when we are informed about how trauma shows up at work, we're better able to retain that talent.
Hello, welcome to Notes on Resilience. I'm your host, Manya Chilinsky, and this is another episode in our series, Unveiling Trauma's Impact, Navigating the Hidden Costs. Today, we're talking about the hidden costs of trauma in the workplace. And my guest is Allessandria Polizzi. She is the CEO of Verdant Consulting and a recognized thought leader on workplace mental health, psychological health and safety, and building resilient organizations. We had the best conversation, and I know that you're really going to learn a lot listening to this episode. Hi, Allessandria. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, before we dig into the subject matter, the topic at hand today, I ask all my guests, if you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be and why?
Yeah, so lots of potential options for that. But the one that I would most like to speak with would be Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Oh,
Well, this is what it should be everyone's answer. And so why? Force to be reckoned with, the ability to speak with verve and vigor about the expectation of equality for women. I have several of the t-shirts that have her quotes on them. One of my favorites is not fragile like a flower, but fragile like a bomb. And just how she was able to navigate in a very different time, but stick to her values and her ethics.
Yes. She would be an amazing dinner companion. Yeah, that's a good one. I like it.
A little RBG.
Yeah, exactly. I think we could all do with a little RBG almost every day.
When I heard that she passed away, my son was with me, and he pulled up his phone and says, "Oh, who's Ruth Bader Ginsburg?" I said, "Why?" "Oh, she died." I had to pull over the car.
Oh, yeah.
Pull over the car and cry. And he felt terrible that he was the one to tell me, but I had to just pull over and have a moment.
Yeah, that was a blow, that one, for sure. Well, thank you for sharing. And our topic today is you and I are going to talk about the hidden cost of trauma and how it shows up in the workplace. And when we're talking about hidden cost, it could be financial. It could be things like reduced productivity or things that aren't as tangible, but like lost opportunity cost or societal burdens, long-term consequences that we're just somehow not factoring in. So with that as our starting point, from your perspective, when you're thinking about the workplace, what are the most significant hidden costs?
I can point to any business goal and tell you how having a healthy workplace will increase the likelihood of that being successful, and how the opposite is true. And that's not just based on my opinion, but I can probably find a peer-reviewed scientific study that also backs it up. So in our book we just published, for example, we have 20 different business objectives, all of which are furthered and improved by having a healthy, psychologically healthy workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And, healthy workers, healthy company. How does trauma come into that? By equipping leaders and creating a trauma-informed workplace. These are skills that apply to anyone, whether or not they've had trauma or not. These are leadership skills we can put in place, things like giving people the ability to have choice, co-regulating stress responses, simple things that we can learn, create healthier workplaces. And this is not a issue that's unique to certain industries. It's not unique to only certain quote unquote types of people or backgrounds. So pretty much any outcome, be it productivity, quality of product, customer satisfaction, change adoption, learning new skills, tapping into your diverse talent, retention, engagement, presenteeism. I mean, I can go on and on.
Mm-hmm.
We have specific things that happen in businesses that keep the businesses from being as productive and as lucrative as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them tie back to the psychological health of the workplace.
Right. So a business exists to serve a purpose, or an organization exists to serve a purpose, to make money, to sell a product, to have a service that creates a better world, whatever the end result is. It's not created to be this group of people who sit around and share their feelings. But what is the challenge for organizations that aren't building environments that are psychologically safe or trauma informed, or are places that are really healthy for the individuals who are working there?
Having a healthy workplace is not the same thing as having people talk about their feelings. So I think about, and many folks in this space think about mental health at work in the same way we think about physical health at work. Okay. So I'm not going to, it's a very easy math for me to say, if I don't injure or kill my employees, my business is better. This was a radical concept 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We think about mental health as health, right? We have physical health, we have psychological health. If I have healthy employees, my business performs better. That doesn't mean we have to talk about our feelings. That just means we shouldn't be putting in place behaviors or ways of working that aggravate and have been scientifically proven to either create trauma or be disruptive for those who have experienced it.
Right. What are some of those kind of behaviors?
I think I mentioned one, which is giving people choice.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this has zero to do with tell me about, no one wants, you should not be asking people about their trauma. The trauma informed, the emphasis is on informed, right? So being an informed leader, informed practices. So what we know about trauma is that, especially childhood trauma, it changes the physical nature of the brain. And so the brain responds to stress in very different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be more activated, more extremes, etc. And so, first of all, knowing that, when we can recognize those behaviors as a leader, I don't just think that person's crazy, that person has problems, that person, what's wrong with them?
Mm-hmm.
Instead, I, as a leader, go, oh, that person's activated. And because I'm informed, I'm not going to respond in kind. I'm going to focus on my regulation. I'm not going to escalate things because that's not productive. This is a great opportunity for me to help that person learn a better way of responding to stressful situations, to create new neural pathways. Honestly, we can do this for every single person in the organization. They do not have to have had trauma to benefit from those types of leadership skills.
What are some of the barriers, systemic or structural, that you've encountered within the workplace environment that make it difficult for people to, address these hidden costs?
I think one is the erroneous belief that what we're doing today is working and that anything additional would deter from this high success rate we have in how businesses are run. Businesses are incredibly dysfunctional and wasteful, incredibly wasteful. 2 out of every 3 projects, and most projects we invest in are big financial investments. 2 out of 3 fail.
Wow.
That is not a good ROI. Why do they fail? The majority of time that they fail has to do with communication and interpersonal skills.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have anything to do with, other, it's mostly tied to being human at work. So right there, if you could just get one more project out the gate, like imagine how much better your business would be. 70% of managers are consistently rated as being very poor.
Mm-hmm.
70% of employees will not speak up if they see a problem or have an idea on how to make the business better. Okay, that is a large cache of cash.
Yes.
If I could unmute my employees, if I could actually tap into the thing I'm paying for, imagine how much better my business would be. So what's in the way? Like I said, one is this somehow denial that what we're doing isn't working. 2, I think there's a fear that when we admit that we have emotions, that means we have to talk about them. It does not. I think people are afraid of having to be vulnerable, overly exposed, appear weak. We have many unhealthy ways of thinking about the human psyche. And those don't really serve us to get the best out of our people.
Mm-hmm.
The other one I get a lot, like I literally had it today, was, well, how will you measure that? Okay, one, the World Health Organization has the psychosocial hazards. Just as we know how to measure physical hazards, we know how to measure psychological hazards. Like this has been established since 2007 in Canada and Australia. So we're not making it up. And how are you measuring it now?
Yeah.
How do you look like you're not doing damage now? So I think there's just this, it's just new. It's new for us. But when we stop thinking about it being about feelings and more about it being about health, right? And keeping employees healthy, then the conversation in my mind changes, or it should.
Yes. I appreciate that, bringing us back to that it's about health and that organizations need healthy people. How can we foster a greater awareness of what we're missing when we're not focusing on the health of employees?
Yeah, I think number one, the next generation is not going to really make this very optional. And this is going to come in 2 ways. One is, as we're seeing, a demand and a prioritization for better ways of living that are not about living to work.
Mm-hmm.
Secondarily, this next generation, 100% of them had a childhood traumatic event called COVID. And so that has impacted the development of their brains so that as they enter the workforce, the need will be so profound and has been profound as we've seen this next generation enter the workforce, that there's really not a lot we can do to avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
There are multiple states, Massachusetts and Rhode Island are 2 of them, but there's 32 states that are exploring legislation that would make things like workplace bullying illegal.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I get a question about how do you measure that? I'm like, the same way you measure sexual harassment, discrimination. We figured it out. So that is a kind of more of the stick approach.
Mm-hmm.
But I think as we see organizations start to understand that having a healthy workplace is a good business,
Mm-hmm.
and that doesn't mean no conflict. That doesn't mean less work. That doesn't mean lowered productivity or lowered standards. It's actually the opposite. We will start to see that sea change, but it just takes some few at the front end really seeing that through.
Right. I love talking to you, Allessandria, because you make it so clear. And in my mind, I just think, Yes, exactly. Everything you just said. Let's check, check, check. Let's do this.
What do you mean ROI? First of all, how expensive do you think it is to not be mean? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
Like, did you somehow see? I don't understand. I've never read one article, not one scientific study that says that abusing our employees or ignoring their health is advantageous to the bottom line. Not one.
But there's obviously something built into the system or built into the way that we do business that is blocking people from seeing that.
Well, so 100 years ago, we probably thought that we couldn't keep people safe on the factory floor either, that it would bankrupt us, right? If I have to worry about people being safe on machines, then I can't run my business. 100 years ago, in fact, I bet you there's people who actually think that now. That is not true. We know that not to be true. And so I think the more we can start to really push these assumptions, I think the better off we can be. Like I said, I think there's just a big fear of the unknown. I think there's a big fear of having to be exposed and vulnerable and weak. And that is not at all what we're talking about. Just understand what it is to be human and how to human at work.
Right. It all comes down to that, which again seems very simple, but isn't necessarily in the actual doing of it.
But the doing of it is. Here's the thing, the doing of it is. The World Health Organization has workplace mental health guidelines. There are 12 identified psychosocial hazards. You can assess your organization today to see where do we have the biggest risk, right? That's not that hard. That's a survey, right? These are not difficult.
The idea isn't difficult, as you're saying now that you can even do that assessment. That's not difficult. Is it changing the mindset?
It's all but between the ears, my friend. And it's cultural. What I find really troubling is the mindset of, well, I had to suffer, so other people should have to do the same. That's a mindset that's out there. I mean, they don't say it that plainly, obviously, but oh, I never had a problem with this. I bet you did.
Yes. I was talking to someone about the kind of work that I do, talking about compassionate leadership and building trauma sensitive organizations, which is built off the same framework as your work. And this person said to me, that's great. Love it. My company's never going to do that. They treat us like we're robots and we don't have feelings and we don't have emotions. So they're never going to invest in this. And I got so frustrated with that response. I'm sure it's absolutely true, given the environment that this person works in. But that was so disheartening to think that there are potentially out there organizations that don't even want to think about making these kind of changes.
Probably, let's think about any kind of even technology change, which is interesting because most of them are embracing AI. But you think about, like I said, 100 years ago when it was, hey, we should probably stop people from getting their fingers lopped off, or, let's not leave water on the floor. I bet you there was a lot of resistance to that too, because that's how it's always been.
Well, and as humans, we're not necessarily great at making changes, even when we know the change is a good change. And even when I'm the only one who needs to make the change. But if you're talking about a whole organization and culture and managers and different levels, that's a more complex kind of change and feels like work.
And yet, how much work is it to keep working in these dysfunctional workplaces? I mean, we create so much waste and so much inefficiency in the ways in which we maintain this dysfunctional status quo that it's just, it boggles the mind.
I really appreciate the analogy to, factory environment 100 plus years ago, because there was a lot of pushback, and this is the way that I want to do it. And I want to hire younger and younger children to help me do this. And I think I just read something about child labor and people wanting to lower the age at which you can hire children. And I thought, or we could not do that and build psychologically safe workplaces and get more out of the adults who are already working for us.
Again, 70% of your employees are not telling you when something is broken and not working. or when they have an idea to make it better. And when they did research on things like the Boeing disasters that have happened, they showed that people down the line saw the problem, but either raised it and were ignored or afraid to mention it.
Yes, I have read some of those studies too. So, all right, that's a great segue into the question of what are the ethical and moral obligations of our organizations or us as individuals? The underlying theme here is acknowledge the trauma that's coming into your organization, but the overarching is to build a healthy organization. So, what is our moral and ethical obligation here?
It's pretty clear. Work shouldn't hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we create workplaces where it does, we are hurting more than just our employees, and we are hurting more than our bottom line. We are hurting the communities in which those people reside. As we, look to grow more talent in an ever shrinking talent market, understanding how to retain that talent, it's a huge business problem. And so when we are informed about how trauma shows up at work, we're better able to retain that talent. The thing that I love about this work is that the skills, when you look at the World Health Organization and their framework, it is protective of mental health. So don't have dysfunctional ways of working. And that includes things like role clarity and like shared goals. So we're not talking all touchy-feely stuff here. So protective. And then there's this middle bit that I really enjoy talking about, which is building skills to navigate challenges in a more healthy and productive way. Because we as humans, and for the most part, and especially in the US, we are not taught how to human in general, right? We don't know how to manage the emotional responses. We don't know how to handle stress per se. And so educating people on what that looks like and how to do that in a more effective way, specifically leaders, that can help drive better outcomes for the business as well as for that human. Because if I know how to navigate stress, I know how to navigate stress, right?
Right.
That's not just work stress. We just have the one brain. Like it just, whatever we learn one place, we're going to apply in another. And so that's the opportunity to help make an impact. The last thing I'll say on this one is that we can no longer ignore the external impacts on the mental health and capacity of our employees. In other words, things like the war in the Ukraine, the economy. There's a big concern about political upheaval here in the United States, or the war in the Middle East, climate change, AI. All of those things put a pressure on the psychological health of our employees, and that shows up at work. We may want to say, leave it at the door. That's not real. You can't actually do that. That's just suppressing negative emotions, which we all know is incredibly unhealthy, both physically and psychologically. So I think from a community perspective, we have to be aware of the pressures on our teams so that we're at least understanding, oh, if I'm, doing this project at this time, but it's also, the time when kids are going back to school, right? Gee, could I do that 2 weeks earlier, 2 weeks later? Like it's simple things that we can decide that have to do with creating whole workers that can be effective.
Yes, I appreciate you bringing up, just the current environment that we're in with so many different stressors that are affecting all of us in different ways. And, listening to you reminds me of something someone said in one of my first podcast episodes, which is that no matter what, I can't bring 100% of myself to work 100% of the time. And it doesn't even have to be a trauma. It could be that I stayed up too late last night watching the, Division series.
Mm-hmm.
And so now the next day I'm not going to be 100%. And we have to be building environments where we recognize that, where we're not somehow telling people that you're not enough if you're not bringing 100% of yourself to the job.
Or part of bringing your whole self includes bringing some of those parts of the darker parts. It's a very interesting way of seeing people at work. Some emotions are fine. We don't freak out when someone's angry.
Mm-hmm.
you show one other kind of emotion and we got major, it undermines your credibility. And again, I'm not advocating for people showing any emotions at work. I'm advocating for people's emotions being protected and their ability to navigate them and acknowledge that work impacts our feelings, right? That we
Yes,
actually have an impact as a result of work.
absolutely. So, what is giving you hope right now, looking at this landscape and changes we're seeing or not seeing?
I think globally, this is a movement. So the thing that got me super excited about this was when ISO, which is the International Organization for Standardization, right? The ones who do like supply chain and total quality management and like health and safety, very, very engineering, right? They launched a standard for psychological health and safety in 2021. And I got so excited. And now I'm the global liaison for that. So that gets me really excited because we're on a path to move out of the, oh, this is something I can ignore. This is squishy. You can't measure it. Let's just pretend like none of that exists. And we are acknowledging that occupational health and safety is both physical and psychological.
When I read about that new ISO standard, I remember thinking, this needs to be bigger news.
Yes, it does. I was like, the game has changed.
Yes.
And that was like 3 years ago. But it is in some circles. And so that gives me hope. I think this next generation gives me hope. I think as we follow in the footsteps of Canada, Australia, I mean, our neighbors for the US, our neighbors to the north and the south, both have requirements to have psychologically healthy and safe workplaces with regular audits, both Mexico and Canada. So this is coming. We have 32 states considering this legislation. This is coming.
So everybody get ready.
Get ready.
Start working on it now so you're ready when it comes.
So do you want to be in the front end of that or do you want to be in the back end?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Allessandria, thank you so much. I can talk to you forever about this, and we will after a podcast. But can you let us know how people can reach you to learn more about your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So our company's website is verdantconsulting.net. We have just launched a workbook. It's available on Amazon that will help organizations build their workplace mental health strategy based on data and business objectives. And you can see me on LinkedIn as well as TikTok as your HR big sister.
I will put links to those in the show notes so people can find you easily. Allessandria, thank you so much. This was such a great conversation, and I see change on our horizon.
Let's go. Let's make it happen.
Thank you for listening. I hope you got as much out of this conversation as I did. So if you'd like to learn more about me, Manya Chilinsky, I work with organizations to help understand how to create environments where people can thrive after difficult life experiences. And I do this through talks and consulting. I'm a survivor of mass violence, and I use my experience to help leaders learn about resiliency, compassion, and trauma-sensitive leadership, to build strategies to enable teams to thrive and be engaged amidst difficulty and turmoil. If this is something you want to learn more about, visit my website, www.manyachilinsky.com, or email me at manya@manyachilinsky, or stop by my social media on LinkedIn and Twitter. Thanks so much.